We'll get going here in about a minute or two. Probably about 10 of, give folks a chance to straggle as we get closer to 6. Mike, how you doing? All right, you. I know, I'll go over here. I'll go over here. Here we are. I can't see you. Yeah, we got these pillows like Fenway Park.
Last time
Yeah. Did you ever sit behind one of those pillars at Fenway?
No, but I used to sit behind the pillars that you try to stay.
Oh, yeah.
You stay all day, we'll try to stay in this thing.
Shady. Yeah.
But they never redeveloped.
But yeah.
But actually, the city is actually provided quite a bit. But that lot. It was fenced in. At some point, the group of guys jumped the fence. And mowed, they, from the map, they laid out the base. From the original time, and started this morning on the ground. And really
Baseball games on that one, Tiger Stadium.
eventually the city just made other things. I think the lot itself is preserved.
It's kind of like the Yankee Stadium. And that's more formalized. I went to Asia University Mission School. Right. That one stadium is that part of that institute. So it's
These are the only.
at least, yeah. So I guess that's. These are.
Yeah, there was some of them. People were kind of saying,
Thanks for coming.
Good evening. Hi, yeah, fun. Well, starting with a couple minutes late.
All right, so it's about 10 of. I'm going to get going. And just so you're all aware, we are recording this meeting, about the presentation part of it, so that folks who aren't here can observe it later and offer comment. We'll have some online feedback for those who aren't here. So just so you know, I'll probably end the recording following the presentation. So thanks again for coming. My name is Bob Murphy. I'm a community planner with Barton and Judas. We've been retained by the city to help develop the Harborside Master Plan, this is our 3rd public meeting, which is why we're all here tonight. And we're looking forward to presenting our path to how we got here today, to pretty much a full draft layout and environmental learning center layout, programming analysis, and pro forma and governance structure. So I'm looking forward to hear your thoughts on that as we move to the final stages of the plan. One second. Well, there we go. So again, tonight, we're going to go through kind of a summary of our engagement efforts so far after kind of going through some of the overall project scope project team introductions. Then we'll go over the development of the master plan, the phasing that we've proposed, different elements, as well as the environmental learning center. You hear me talk about the environmental learning center a lot. It is a key focus of this plan, and it is part of the reason that project was funded in the first place. It's really a unique approach. We don't see this almost. We work across New York State and some of the surrounding states in the Northeast. And as a planner, I've never seen kind of this nuanced approach of embracing what is in most situations a nuisance use on the waterfront, the wastewater treatment plant, and just saying, hey, this is here. We're letting you know it's here, and it's going to be an advantage for the community. So it's really a unique approach to facilitate better connections and make Harborside a destination with that backdrop has been the challenge of this planning effort really for the last 12 months. So we'll kind of go over some of the solutions that we've, and really the main solution is involving the Environmental Learning Center as a way to bring the water treatment plant work into the site as a place people want to. Then we'll kind of open it up for some Q&A, some feedback on these boards that we have here, as well as some of the documents that I have on the table. And then we'll wrap things up with next steps for the rest of the project. So our project status and timeline. First, we'll go over our project team. We have our Harborside Master Plan Committee on the right side of the screen here. I won't run through all the names, but they represent different elements of both public sector and private sector in the city. And I noticed that I still have Ethan on there, Shalice, so that should be Shalice down there. But that's really the point of a committee of this nature, is you want to have both representation from the public sector and the private sector so that the plan is really more of a grassroots plan. As a consultant, you know, I've done projects, different plans across the state, but I'm never going to know Plattsburgh the way people who live and work here do. So that's why the role of the committee is really important in directing our efforts where we go. We provide the sort of expertise on the process, but the local context is really where the committee lends us a hand, helps steer the project in a positive direction. Our team of consultants is led by myself, BNL, Bob Murphy, and my landscape architecture colleagues, Lee Jones and Olivia Mallon, helped craft these conceptual drawings that you see to my side. Teammates on our project include Albertine and Courier, led by Brian Jones, who had already previously been working on facade improvements to the wharf. Again, to make it less of my interpretation of the wharf's look is that it's very Soviet looking, a lot of brutalist, concrete, to try to make it a little bit more inviting. And that's also what the Environmental Learning Center seeks to do as well. Furthering our studies of that Environmental Learning Center are forward planning and Hadley exhibits. Top Pool of Forward Planning has provided a governance structure in pro forma of similar facilities. And an example, a potential one for the Environmental Learning Center. And it's really kind of got the stuff you don't see when you go visit a facility identified and mapped out from a cost benefit perspective. Hadley Exhibits has helped us plan out the stuff you do see at a museum. Different exhibit spaces, how you would lay it out, different facility elements to be concerned with as far as lighting, entrance, functionality really of a museum, an educational center, which we hope the Environmental Learning Center will be. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention the Department of State, New York State Department of State, led by Barbara Kendall, our project representative. And they funded a good portion of this study. The city applied for funding and received, I think it was 75% grant funding for this effort through the state. So they're a key part of this, and they're also part of the review of the as well. Lastly, we do have a webpage. Many of you are here, probably are aware. There is a project-specific webpage on the city website, which will have a QR code for you later, those of you watching on the. So where are we at in the process? Well, we began last July with the project kickoff meeting. Just like any other sort of planning effort, I like to think of them as in three components. One is where are we at today, which involved a lot of field reconnaissance. We did a community survey last January, also review of previously completed planning documents. That helps set the stage of where Harborside is today as far as planning documents go and inventory analysis. The next part of the plan is where do you want to go? Sort of that vision for what we want the space to be. And some of the things that came out of our public workshop in April helped really kind of confirm where the committee wanted to go as far as making it better connected to downtown, being a destination for folks to want to come to as a unique destination. And then also embracing, as we've said, it's right next to the wastewater treatment plant. How do we best do that? And then over the last couple of months, it's been, all right, how do we get there? So it's where are we at today? Where do we want to go tomorrow? How do we get there? That's where some of these detailed recommendations kind of help us get there. And that's what we want to hear more from you on tonight. I'll let you like what we do. This is the third public workshop. Following tonight's feedback, we'll take that in, we'll review it with the committee, make some changes as appropriate, and then finalize the draft plan. Probably finalize the draft plan late fall, getting the approvals from both New York State and the City Council early 2023. You also see on here the CFA grant awards. That's the consolidated funding application. In an effort to kind of expedite implementation of this plan, the city did apply for funding for certain elements, and we'll go into that in a minute. And the award notification for those grants occurs in December. So the city would know whether it was funded or not. For a couple parts of this plan, this whole design for both what we call the Harborside lakefront area and the Harborside riverfront area, that'll take several iterations of pursuit of grants to help get there. So, but first try, we'll know about in December. So that's where we're at with today's schedule. And you'll see this was from our proposal early on in the process. We're about month 15, 16 of that calendar right now. And pretty well on schedule for wrapping it up after having the CFA submitted in July. So public engagement summary, as I mentioned, this is the third public workshop. We had a virtual public workshop last November. Many of you may recall, if you've been a part of any community planning during the COVID era, you probably experienced some form of virtual meeting. And this was a good way to really do a couple of things. One, inform the public of the project. This is what we're looking at. Also get some initial sort of SWOT analysis about the site. What do you like about the site now? What don't you like? What do you think would work here that isn't existing elsewhere in the city? And lastly, it did help us kick off our community survey. We had a community survey, which I'll mention here. Here's the public workshop number 1. And again, it was virtual, it was recorded. Folks were able to review it later, much like tonight. Our community survey was really a big hit as far as public participation. Everyone in the public really had an interest in it and were really willing to offer their opinion, which was great. We had about 1,100 responses over that 2-week period, I believe. We promoted it both on the city website and on Facebook and numerous other sources on report we had spread around. Yes.
Is there another part of the slide that says yes somewhere?
There is. That was just a screenshot of that of the survey, and just wanted to show you what it did look like at the time. We had about 1,100 respondents.
And this one happened during the pandemic.
Well, last January. Now we're in January. Yep. So still not a ideal time to have. You know, remember in, actually at our second public meeting, it was a week after I. So, you know, it's still, you know, still something around for sure. So anyway, we received a lot of great feedback on our initial conceptual plans. 53% said they don't visit Harborside because there's enough to do. 53% also said that Harborside Lakefront, they access Harborside via Dock Street, 22% via Green Street. You know, and we were able to get some of this information about how folks get to Harborside and what types of amenities, such as about 70% saying that Harborside is lacking in passive recreation. And passive recreation is like picnic areas, you know, sort of nature trails, things that aren't really formalized, organized recreation. That was something that was desired from Harborside. And there was several open forum comments as well. Didn't put them on this slide, but that one comment that was made often was that it should be appealing to people of all ages, which makes a lot of sense, as well as for all seasons. Obviously, the seasons come into play in upstate New York, and if you have a park that isn't usable in the wintertime, you have a park that's not used out.
Were there high response negative comments the plan?
Not at this stage. I mean, really, there wasn't. I mean, there's mostly parking lots at Harborside currently, and so it was really kind of, I like to see this, I like to see that. Nobody was really like, I want to see it stay the same. So,
Was there any intent of creating a lake fence, city beach all the way down through?
So we did make an effort to connect Harborside with the rest of the bike network. We really didn't have, it wasn't really part of our study area to take it much around downtown. The whole project area basically goes from Peace Point Park back to Green Street and then down along the Saranac River to the old 96.
Yeah, I just was putting it that way because it circles around, so that's just transient air coming from the during the summer.
There's no continuity between one of the Plattsburgh and the other two.
Right.
And what I think what he's saying, is some sort of continuity between the city beach and all that shoreline, all the way down to that area. My biggest concern as a citizen, as a taxpayer, is that we have a great civic center that was born when I was. We're going to tear that down because of neglect, misuse, unused, however you want to put it.
Yep.
We have an infrastructure of a water treatment plant. Well, one building's 36, the other one's 56 on a good day. My concern is we invest all this money into that, into what we're doing. I don't want a business downtown. I can understand all of it. I think it's a great opportunity that, but we have to address the elephant in the room. I can't see as a taxpayer investing all of this money to potentially have something. I'd like to see studies on whatever we've done to look at capacity. And we have so many, don't know how to put it, I'm not calling any of that. We have county Plattsburgh, we have baseball, all that stuff trickles down to there, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that's what has changed in 40 years, 50 years with that building to secure any of that stuff, to make sure that any investment we have down there is palatable 30 years from now.
You're saying because of it being the wharf being there,
I'm just saying
maybe
that,
being in danger.
I'm just saying that I think to a certain degree there's a carpet full of books, you know, to a certain degree as far as I'm not disagreeing with the plan whatsoever. I'm disagreeing with
Your question.
that section of that section having, again, I'm looking as a lipstick on a thing. You're asking me to go down to a farmer's market. Again, we have a restaurant named Tavern in Plattsburgh. I'm not going to go down and share buy food where I share. I'm sorry. As a taxpayer, I can't see that. It makes no sense to me.
No.
And again, so can we move the treatment? Can we move any of it?
So
I'm sorry.
So
I didn't connect it that way.
Yeah.
I was kind of looking at a different venture of expanding the waterfront and connecting all of one lump sum, which that would be the future. So that really is the future. It's just that we have to stay on. Try to connect it all these areas. So.
But I would say,
Yeah.
and again, we still have, you then
Yeah.
have Green Street Monday through Friday, you know? It's a thoroughfare of waste houses. You know, and they're going right down where we're all.
So, thank you for that. That is obviously the big impediment to the
Yes.
success of Harborside as a recreational attraction. You know, previous city studies have shown that moving the plant is costly. It just can't be. So the solution here is let's make the most of this waterfront space we have. And, you know, I don't know if I'll be able to convince you.
We're gonna be in competition with Town Class for their little adventure for the Memorial Park, maybe some of the puddles and whatever. They're gonna make something similar.
Sure, it's true, like, you're gonna have competition from other waterfront places, but none that's this close to downtown businesses here.
Right.
Or
Even
with
if even if it's opposite way. You still make a bike path that works there, because even when over Burlington with their, historical place there. They have to connect.
yeah, the island tree.
It just has a constant avenue of people during the summer going up and down. That's not enough to bring that in.
So to that extent, our project has a loop trail within the site and doesn't, you know, we're attempting to connect to the regional networks across the pedestrian bridge over to McDonough Park there, and then down along can't think of the name of the trail. Yeah, it's the other way. So we're connecting to them both physically and with wayfinding signage, which I'll get into.
You want to go all the way to the airports.
Right. And that's, you're right, because we want to draw from that. If we can make that regional trail network better, that'll bring more people down to waterfront down to. But I guess extending the trail network improvements to the overall trail network a bit beyond our scope.
That's future.
Yes.
Yeah, and just quickly to the point of Green Street, we all know how poor the access is down there, so the city is exploring various options for expanding that street, improving both pedestrian and vehicle access. Down the hard side.
To support something that the city might do in the future, you know, take their Green Street and do this, do that. I'm just gonna use the Craig Memorial Civic Center as an example. What reassurances that we have that the city is going to be addressing these things as we go forward? And now that's great. We can have the plan, we can have the money and all that, but if we don't have anything saying that, okay, we commit to this, we have to commit to this for the citizens to make it happen. Green Street is it?
No, that's a well-founded question, maintenance. Anytime you do any sort of.
Who's gonna maintain?
Yep.
it? You gotta put, you have.
So yeah, that's a great comment to mention here. I think from our perspective tonight is we have to plan it before it's done anyway. So, but point well taken. So let me just move back to our public engagement here. That survey, as I mentioned, occurred last January. We had a workshop in this very room at the end of April to go over some of our proposed projects. Here's where we saw some positive and negative feedback here. You see these red dots and green dots. Red dots were folks were asked to put on ideas they didn't like, and green dots on ideas they did like. Obviously, you know, here this had to do with putting rapids, hydraulic rapids in the Saranac River. We got mixed results. So, you know, this is an example of where you don't take necessarily every single piece of feedback and do exactly what it says, because you have to put conflicts there. This points to the need for a specific study about whether that's something that's feasible with DEC. We have seen it elsewhere in the state where they have okay hydraulics for whitewater rafting type excursions, not everywhere. So that's where this sort of conflict merits further study. So that's an example where we did see some negative feedback. We also saw some negative feedback on the idea of hammocks, hammock growth per se. We got negative feedback on it. So, yeah, but we took that, and so, while we still think that there is possibility for that to be a good idea, we have sort of removed, that as a permanent feature. Yeah, so we have trees, and if you want to bring your own in, it would perfectly fine. So, but also serves without them too. So that's, that's an example of how we kind of amend it based on what we heard at that meeting. So, we made revisions and that helped us prepare for that CFA round in the summertime, which I'll get into in a minute. So right now I'm going to run through briefly because we have the plans here. So I don't want to take too much of your time. And those watching online will have the plans available along with this posting as well. But I'll run through the 7 different phases that we have of the site layout, along with the kind of more detailed elements of the environmental learning center. First off, our master plan document, that's the thing that ties all of this together. You can see here there's a prescription from Department of State that kind of maps out what we need to provide in document form. Not the most exciting thing to see visually, but this is the product that we have to produce. This is where we're going with our work product. But all these components that you see here are the content that goes in. So just wanted to make sure you saw what our work product was from this. So here we have the overall site layout for what we call the Harborside lakefront sub area. With obviously the landmarks you see here as the wharf taking up a large chunk. Then we've reworked the parking area and pedestrian and vehicular access throughout the site, taking all the way around from Green Street to Dock Street, Marina, the Naked Turtle down here, Peace Point Park, out to the northeast. We've maintained the public boat launch as well, and some space for future development as well. I'll get more into detail here, but this is kind of your overall site map of the Harborside. So the first phase that we proposed is circulation improvements. Currently, as you know, the access road coming down Green Street around the wharf takes you right along the water back to Dock Street, closer to the Naked Turtle. And that poses a couple of problems because you're really kind of reserving prime waterfront views, access to the water for cars, and asphalt, which aren't even used by cars all the time. What can we do to bring that more for people to use, to get views that are more scenic, opportunities for events on the waterfront that aren't there now because the road isn't. And to do that, we propose bringing the roadway closer to the train tracks. The train tracks aren't going anywhere. Let's put kind of our uses, our kind of negative asphalt sort of uses closer to the tracks, kind of consolidate them to leave more of the site for more recreation, scenic uses. We've done the same with a perimeter trail that takes you along those tracks, but also along the waterfront itself, even around the wastewater treatment plant, in the water via boardwalk.
Have to change in order to have public
So public access is already, it's already down there with the farmers market. So it really, there's a lot of permitting that would need to occur, especially for the boardwalk piece to get out over the water. But it's certainly things that occur where there are, sort of.
Well, it is a very unique situation. I get that. I look all over the country.
Yeah.
And I can't find anything even resembling.
Mm. A lot of places. A lot of places. The default move is we have a wastewater treatment plant.
Right.
Sometimes it smells. Let's hide it. Let's hide it. Unfortunately, where this is located is such a prime piece of property right on the waterfront, very close to downtown, very close to the train station. So, maybe the reason it's not something like this isn't around because nobody does it. Nobody. It's really, like I said, a really nuanced approach to try to bring this.
Going back down from the plant.
over here.
Distribution back into the line.
So further real there.
The outfalls over there.
The intake comes in from the southern side and works its way south and north.
So what happens on heavy rainfall?
Just the plant itself, I think, is designed to handle about 300 or 400% more than they see on an average day. Just from city usage.
Is there any study on that, the actual usage of the city treatment, the sewage treatment, plant, those sort of things?
Yeah.
Do we have that?
Yeah, to keep track of that on a daily log.
Yeah, city sewers have been pretty much stuck. They're, the city sewers have been pretty much separated.
There's still several combined sewer overflows that we deal with, and which we're slowly addressing one. It's an expensive process.
But that's tough to deal with. Big storm.
Yeah,
I always
it's-
just had that same problem. with almost, just because they had folks who.
Yeah, and the only reason they still exist is because they're legacy operations from 60, 70 years ago, before there were the environmental regulations.
Every time they redo a street, it's separate with sewer.
Yeah,
Well, I know they did it from Cliff Haven all the way to the old, the new base all the way. What a summer.
Yeah, so that's, outfalls, stormwater overflows that sometimes occurs for sure. But I think the perspective of John Ruff, the plant operator, is that those aren't frequent enough to cause issues. Well, yeah, I mean, it's the data that they have. But
Well, maybe students and visitors can figure out some kind of technological developments that the environmental learning center, they can come up with.
right.
With technology and solutions for the wastewater.
And I think the idea of this sort of embracing the fact that this treatment process is going on is that, there'll be signage and information telling you what the plant is doing to make sure the water that goes out into the lake is clean. And
Also, there's an outflow. Further out into the lake. I don't think it's just empty. I went on a tour of the plant.
No, it's
Pretty sure that's what.
Yeah.
Have you guys done any, analysis on COVID vaccine from that stuff, that plant that comes out as well?
I know they do testing for COVID in the water coming into the plant. I couldn't speak in frequency.
No, I just thought they test their sludge basically, so the variable variables. So I'm just wondering if there's any kind of oddity there.
Yeah.
I
John Ruff would have that information. He collects a lot of data. So yes,
I think in that picture I see a can goes out into the water. Is that part of the plan?
yes. Yeah, an elevated boardwalk. The views, I mean, even if you're standing on top of the treatment plant looking out, it's pretty commanding, those views. And if you're out past beyond the plant, they're going to be nicer. So, yes.
I have one question that I don't know if it's there. It's a new kind of, pretty big investment. Is the building itself and the location of Harborside, does it need to stay here?
That's a good question.
Because, I mean, well, like you were saying, you don't.
I'm just saying, if I'm gonna choose a city that has that or doesn't have that, I'm going to Rouse's point.
I mean, the make turtle apparently is fucking. And there's, and there's property in the area. The biggest complaint I've heard about the whole project is the farmers. And I think it could clear up a whole lot of opposition or questions about it if can make people a little happier with it.
So just to respond to that quick, and I know Matt's probably going to say what I'm going to tell you, is that we had proposed some alternative layouts for the farmers market. And obviously, it's the building that it's in now it's not, doesn't really,
It's not a very nice building. It's not very-
it's older building. It doesn't really conduce itself well to having sort of this pedestrian zone here, which we'll get to more in a moment, as it's facing that new environmental learning center. But there's also grant money tied up in the preservation of that building. So,
So the city spent about $300,000 on grant funding rehabilitating one of the old municipal lighting departments.
That's not a real, really, that's what they did?
Yeah.
Unbelievable. Wow.
And there were fallback provisions attached to that grant funding where if the city were to demolish or relocate or repurpose that.
Who signed off on that? I want They, you know what, I'd rather lose it. I would rather lose it.
right. Yes, but that's basically, that's a constraint that we have.
Turn it into a visitor center for the sewage treatment plant.
I think you were asking.
One of the ball building for the farmers markets.
So we'll get to that more in a moment, more details back here. But that's a good question.
So that building cannot be touched.
For the next 5 years.
It's 5 years, right?
Oh, that was the 5 years.
That's the fallback.
So here's just a more detailed look at that circulation plan. I'll move through this a little quicker as we're kind of getting along here, but the purple you see or the magenta is really the traffic pattern here that we laid out for cars, so for vehicles. The black is for bicyclists, again, staying along the tracks here, coming in from Green Street. And then pedestrian we have as this reddish path going around the perimeter, along with this, it's a shared use, pedestrian only in the yellow dotted along the boardwalk, for instance, that wouldn't be for
So
bicycles.
is Green Street the preferred way, or is Dock Street from Bridge Street to Dock Street?
Well, I think, as Matt said, there are ongoing studies about realignment of Green Street, but that still nonetheless is the closest point to downtown and your other, basically pulling from other trail networks as well. But we do have the access off of Dock Street too. So we have both sets of access points. And not pictured here is the pedestrian bridge going over to McDonald's as well.
Because I truly think it should be the shortest road between downtown for the rest of all that.
Yes, yeah, so that's what we show here. Of course, there's further study about the actual alignment.
Is that a pedestrian bridge from the? railroad
Yes,
station?
so we proposed a pedestrian bridge coming off of the railroad station, over the tracks, over our parking arrangement.
I would just, that is a historic building, and that view from, from the east side of it is really the view and
Something to be careful of.
be careful, yeah.
That's not a small project. So that will be a big effort to try to identify the best way to do that if it's fun. And yes,
What you describe on the phone,
mhm.
how do we implement this when it's feasible?
That's a good question. My other role at BNL is as a grant writer. And that's how a lot of these projects get implemented. You can expect municipalities to foot the bill for all of these, the improvements that are proposed.
Well, how many federal grants do you?
So we actually state is what we would be pursuing here for the most part.
Where would
because-
you go on first? This is what we're asking, right?
Well, so just this project, this study is funded through the local waterfront revitalization program by the Department of State in New York. And not all communities are eligible for that program. You have to be on a designated inland waterway. City of Plattsburgh is obviously, and you have to have a plan, which City of Plattsburgh does as well. Having this detailed site plan for Harborside positions the city to get funding for its implementation. They're not going to fund a plan and then not fund its implementation. So that's what we've applied for in the summertime. And we hope to hear good news from in December. And that would fund 75% of project costs for the phase that we proposed, which includes this entire circulation plan. So that, I think the total project cost was 1.2 million.
Have you ever done a project?
Oh, yeah.
We've been learning.
I mean, yeah, like, there's not, as we've said, there's not much like, exactly like this.
So with the capital, it's their objective. All that you're gonna look for to take out 30 years ball change.
So, I'm not sure how the financing plan would go for the city, but basically that was total project costs. The grant would fund 75% of
Yeah.
it. So that leaves, roughly 300,000 of state of city match. That can also be met through in-kind services as well. A lot of these are sidewalks, pavement removal. There's opportunities that DPW could possibly take on some of that and reduce the capital cost to the city. So there are ways to do it without needing to finance.
So there are funding in place already, and aside from what Bob's talking about the grants application, we're waiting on it for. Phase 3 of Saranac River Trail, which is intended to connect effectively Bridge Street to East Point Park through Bridge Street and around the waterfront. The city has had about $1.5 million in funding from the Department of Transportation in place for several years. So the intention is to, if we get this grant in December, have those two funding sources dovetail to allow us to build a sort of portion of it, at least of the surrounding trail.
You overlaid this plan for this.
I don't have that available right now, but we have that.
For Peace Point, I think, in the rural apartment.
We have,
Up in the flood.
we'll get some more of that. So just an example of some of how the pathways will look. It'll look different in different segments, depending on the shoreline, depending on the view shed, depending on what's in between the pathway itself and the water. Here you have the waterfront shared use pathway, which we estimate would be about 2,000 feet. The pedestrian pathway, which again is a little bit further separated from the water. You'll see about the hardening needed. We have that for about 600,000 square feet, 6,000 length feet. And then the boardwalk, we have about 7 boardwalk estimated. So these are just different cross sections of how that trail system would look.
Can you go back?
Sure.
Maybe December, I have a lot.
Just a mile, about a mile, 52.
I have some days for you wall.
Over there, yeah.
You know how much each of these cost per foot?
We do, but I don't have that information.
Don't have.
And that we included all this in the grant application, measured out to what cost we're seeing for these summers. So just some more precedent images that have to do with some of the different features along this particular stretch of the shoreline with proposed outlook, an overhead pavilion. We've tried to mimic the city logo with sort of this tricolored canopy sail looking structure. And you'll see that in a couple other places in our design. But different points where folks can make their way along this trail, either stop to enter the river to fish, or the lake in this case, or get into to their kayak back at the launch, fishing dock opportunities, or just to be able to enjoy the view and just the environment along the river. In many cases down at this point, you can put your back to the wastewater plant behind you and see the whole lake in front of you. So some wayfinding signage, I'll move through this pretty quick. The city has gone through a wayfinding signage project already. And our intent is any signage that comes in to this site would follow the same themes. We want to reinvent the wheel. However, we would like to see some sort of, I guess, unique interpretation of it to show that you're at Harborside. So whether that's its own icon that we see over there, or just a different color to showcase that you're at the Harborside area compared to the rest of the city.
Very monolithic.
Yes. Yeah, and the city has already gone through this process. So I don't want to reinvent that wheel, so to speak. So, but in addition to wayfinding signage, there's also interpretive signage. And these are different opportunities for learning, as we talked about around the WRF, for water quality, local ecology, what work is done in the WRF helps protect local ecology, but also public art. You know, SUNY has a nice art walk programming on campus. How can we extend that down on the waterfront? Maybe increase those connections between students and faculty to come downtown as well.
Some places you can go buy.
What's that?
Look at shoes for bike, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. We've seen that for, veterans memorials. Yeah. So signage for wayfinding, but also for specific, memorial, education, or and just interpretation. And then just some other examples of that, some wayfinding along the ground, perhaps, even embedded into the paths themselves. If any of you have been to Saratoga Springs recently, they have a railroad run, which basically follows their historic train tracks through downtown. They're not there anymore, but they're just imprinted into the sidewalk, so you can see where they were. It gives you a good historical context. Such a same thing could happen on this side as well, which was also dominated by tracks. And then just zoomed in here closer onto the farmers and crafters market. Wanted to give a little detailed breakdown of what we've proposed here. We have not, as we've just discussed, realigned anything with the building itself, and just kind of what we think is an improved way to access your vendor spaces, and possibly set it up for different events like food truck corrals and things like that. This is set up, the intent here is to provide different spaces for vendors to set up in, as opposed to just the open parking lot that is there now. In this case, these are just trees and tree grates. Tents could spill out from the building into this canopied area underneath the trees, offering, really kind of almost unlimited growth for a vendor space.
So this is definitely out.
The depth, that's not a pond. So that's the proposed playground.
Okay,
Oh, yeah. So we do have an open lawn over here, and if that was something a community group wanted to do, they could set up, tarps and boards and put some water in there to freeze. I've seen that at parks across the state. So something that could certainly be done at that open lawn area. I mentioned the proposed playground area first, because you'll see it over on the boards to my left here. The destination playground was a priority brought up by folks at our workshop in April, as well as the committee. So that took priority. And while this is, phase 3, we brought that destination playground as kind of a show-stopping piece of that grant application that was submitted in July. So it's the circulation area, the circulation network, and the proposed playground area that make up that scope. Oh, and before I forget, we do have a proposed right here hardscape spray area as well. You say spray area in Plattsburgh, how much is that going to be used? Because it's cold a lot of the year. That's why it's really more of an informal hardscape area that can be used for events. I mean, the farmers crafters market could spread their tents over that area. And then when it's in the warmer months, you could turn on the spray features as well. So I'll show more about that.
So
Yes.
Where the boundaries come in. Kind of like very little parts or that way.
Yep.
They put in a spot.
Yep.
And everybody said, oh, but it will be
That one.
Early, started early and it kept going late too.
Yes, so people love it. Yeah, it's totally under the control of the city, how much they want to keep that on, so I just wanted to emphasize that it's not going to be a splash pad, continuously, as you all know. So it's really, for 9 months of the year, it's an informal hardscape area. And then it's a splash pad for the 3 warmer months of the year. And then I just wanted to kind of showcase the differences between the current layout for the farmers market and how ours has laid out, just to show that we have just as much space, if not more, for vendor areas. This is how the current layout is, coming straight out of the farmers market building. And then what we've proposed here is kind of a loop to be able to drop off your goods and then take your trucks, whatever you're using to bring your wares, your services and tents to the farmers market and be able to move them back to the parking lot. It's a little bit more efficient route and allows for an expansion of vendors as well. So just wanted to show that we've tried to, what we think is a way to make that easier to expand.
How many public bathrooms have we done in that area?
So we don't have, we haven't proposed any additional ones in here. But if that's something you want to see more of,
We have an abundance of people.
yeah,
Well,
that's the hope.
There's a porta potty.
Right, that's the hope, yeah, and it's also something that you kind of adapt as you grow. As I mentioned, this whole thing is going to take a long time to be implemented
What do you figure? How long do you think it's that?
for the whole thing,
Yeah, just ballpark.
10 years.
I think in 10 years, it's gonna be gone. I think in 10 years, we're gonna do something. Sewage treatment.
Mhm.
You live.
So yes, it's a long-term thing. Maybe it's something that, you expand those as you need it. Yeah.
I just wish the farmers market could move too. I mean, the more I think about it, it's just not moving.
You want more of
It's sewage treatment.
No, I mean, you go to Paradise Lake, it's right on the lake. Keene Valley, it's the beautiful open field, and here we are.
We have wards 1 and 2.
It's right here.
The ocean
Right-
system. There's
right
no
here
way
in
to
the farm. And it's,
I think that's the perception that's going to need to be overcome for sure.
I think I'm not gonna overcome. I mean, I think it's
I think it's
really
available.
terminal unique.
Thank you. So I just wanted to give some more detail about the open lawn area and proposed playground area. Again, this sort of informal plaza with spray features is what we're talking about in this area immediately adjacent to the farmers and crafters market. And the point of that is, we have a lot of folks going to the farmers and crafters market already. They bring their kids down. There's open kind of areas now where they kind of play, but not formalized area where the folks, like young families, can know, oh, I can go down, pick up some, local produce while my kids use the playground. And then they're not paying my net.
Previous workshop, maybe you're still gonna get to it. There's gonna be improvements to the facade of the sewage treatment plants, so it didn't look so much like a sewage treatment plant.
Yes,
So that would help.
yes.
You would have those.
So I'll get to that in a minute. It's really more about the environmental learning center, which is part of but that facade work is going on to the remainder of the wastewater treatment plant under a separate. So I don't have a lot. For instance, let's see. If I show you. And get back to it. So this area, there's a whole new facade designed through a separate project, B&L's on, but that is also, so just wanted to let you know that's moving as well. But we'll have other images of the environmental learning center, which is the part that faces Green Street. Something else to keep in mind here is that, as you mentioned, there are trucks that still will need to get down to the wastewater treatment plant through this proposed pedestrian corridor. That'll have to be carefully managed. Right now, the trucks do not go down there on Saturday mornings for the farmers market, and that sort of arrangement can be made for other times of the week where there's a lot of activity in this area of Harborside area. So
Yeah, that's the other thing is that.
this is going to continue to.
Monday through Friday, when people go down, and we can do it, at least during the day.
Yeah, and we have, and there are, the environmental manager of the treatment plant has data on the amount of trucks that come in on a daily basis.
Oh, sure,
And when they come in as well, so.
No, I don't doubt that, I don't doubt that, they do everything to be utmost. The issue is that it's unfortunate, that's where it is.
I guess we can down.
Yes.
Unhappy.
Yes.
And so just here's a graphic of that destination playground. The idea here was for it to be vertical, so it could be seen from across the whole land area, from the train station, from the Naked Turtle. You could see sort of this vertical piece, because right now it's pretty flat, expansive land. And also wanted to showcase that the spray area here briefly before showing you a quick video. That they can be lit up at night. This is an example of that splash pad with lights that support it. It's just a really unique visual piece for walking around it. Let's see if I can play this video that shows you. I think it's kind of a video of how the splash pad fits. So again, this would be near the farmers market area. Again, operating in the warmer months, you're not going to have it out in October, but just as an attraction in itself, as well as supporting the farmers market and the cities that are already going.
And city workers, we keep this up during the issue.
Yep, it's city-owned property. And again, you can turn off the water for 9 months of the year.
It's just a lot of investment for 9 months of the year, if they're not using it.
It's actually been a pretty cost-effective. Because it's a better alternative to put a pool. So that's,
Department would take care of that.
I'm not sure which city department would.
Public Works, and we
It's
have,
a public works, yeah.
Yeah.
Which is usually how that would.
we have a plumbing specialist who does the open, close each year.
And so it uses a lot less water than pools. It compared to a pool, it is a cost effective.
Yeah, the flush on the pipe.
And then just phase 5 here, move through these a little quicker here as we get closer to 7. Just being able to better access the views and the water itself and this stretch of the shoreline going out to Peace Point Park. It was an important feature here. You also see pavilion and picnic area in this space here. You also notice that we've left this future Harborside subdivision piece kind of as a blank slate. That's at the end of the parking area now. And the thought there was that could be open to future development. Which again, we wanted to keep the roadways on the backside of that close to the tracks to maximize the utility of that shoreline for recreational uses.
How many lots?
Read that?
What was the question?
How many lots?
Nothing's been subdivided as yet. The parcel structure down there is awkward. It wasn't created with future development in mind, but you have a.
Do they consider the wetland?
No,
It's not. Then moving up the river a little bit, we have what is known as that NICEAG site that's currently being cleaned up. And I know that that is also in a state of kind of flux as to what level that it will be cleaned up to. But the idea that we've shown here is connections for the Saranac River Trail from across the Saranac River. These bridges, I believe, are open today. along with trail networks connecting the two, we've proposed basically a flat green space for the bulk of the site that could be used for maybe soccer, youth football, just kind of an informal grass area, because we're kind of unsure of the future of that site from a cleanup perspective. But we do have access to the water up and down, if you see as you come over to look at these in closer detail. And we've also included provisions for those hydraulics to be able to do some whitewater rafting in the river, should that prove fruitful. And we also present here that circulation path or network that we showed you before, with black being bicycle circulation, this purple magenta being vehicular circulation, and the red being shared use pathways, and then the yellow dotted lines pedestrian only.
Are we really entertaining the water park aspect of this?
Yeah.
Water.
That's what I was trying to.
Is that really, that's really entertaining that?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, this is a plan. It would, and we've said that this needs more specific stuff, but that's where we've arrived at, because we've received pretty positive feedback from the possibility.
From citizens here in Plattsburgh, so people pay attention, really?
50% of my priority.
No kidding.
And then 30%.
Whitewater.
You think they'd want to move it all the way to the river and follow it?
You know. If it was whitewater, that wouldn't really be good.
That could be part of the study. Maybe it makes more sense for it to be two there than what.
Including is more open.
I think.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Like some sort of.
The good thing about hydraulics is you could probably change it depending on the event.
That's true.
So, but anyway, that it has gotten consideration. It's not happening tomorrow, but it has gotten a positive reception. People have expressed positive. So I'm gonna leave the slide because you guys have offered your questions so far. But any other questions?
One more thing in terms of using the river for water, is you'll need some kind of a collection point on the river.
Yes,
So,
yes, which we have already.
Park.
And Donna Park on this. So there are publicly owned lands on both sides of the river. That would be kind of the end point of that. And also it's great, if you've ever seen this in an urban setting, it's great spectating this as well. You see people going down. It's kind of like being at a ski lodge. And it just makes an exciting place just to spectate, as you're walking through your day.
I mean, there's opportunities for many.
Absolutely, for that same reason, for that same reason.
Well, yeah, question that. Is with that high flow days, because of rainwater that we really shut that right. And then we have some we can use it at that point. What about algae blooms?
I mean, of course, if there are algae blooms,
I just didn't know if there was any. Generally, the kind of spike up during August.
when the water gets low.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's, I would think with more, if you had more water moving through with the hydraulics, that would be less likely.
Okay, yeah.
Scenario. But, and as with anything, even City Beach, when there are problems with algal blooms, we gotta take care of that. So, and a lot of that is stuff that occurs because of things outside the city, as well as in the city. So, you just gotta be able to account for that.
So the Imperial Dam, is anything, is that something that's going to be an issue? No, I mean, because
Down the road.
down the road, and then again, if it comes out, it changes the whole.
I think again, I'd like to know the life expectancy of the building you're talking about, because even though I would say, it's the age of the building, there's some concrete issues and some other stuff. Yeah, I don't have an answer to any, I just think that.
Know that
It's the same reassurance that, 10 years, we're not going okay, we can't move it, but we gotta rebuild it. As far as that's.
Like I said, the hydraulics is a study away, like that needs more specific studies, so. But that, again, that's something that the city has expressed interest in.
I think it makes sense to take advantage of the room.
But if they're gonna rebuild it, it's a point, they're gonna.
Well, which one?
Yep, the lake is gonna be close to the lake. It's gonna
Well,
be-
they already kind of took off this. Yeah, it just did exactly the same thing. but that's-
So we're gonna move on to the Environmental Learning Center, just to wrap things up here. This is the view from Green Street, looking at the proposed design. Again, we're still in a proposed designs phase here, but the idea is here, again, to have another vertical element that draws your attention from off of Green Street, from off of Bridge Street, from Dock Street to this area. You can see it from.
Just for point of reference, is this like an echo place like that?
Yeah. Yeah, so that's one of our case studies that we looked at, is that sort of thing. This would be focused on water quality. I mean, again, we're embracing the notion that this is where we clean our water. This is what clean water does. This is the process that takes care of that, and why it's important.
By the way, you can go on the tour.
Yeah, and John, this is basically a mechanism for John to do more tours. So just small interior space, we had talked in our committee about possibly having events inside the space, especially upstairs. Like I said, the view is really nice from that walking deck, which this would be level with.
Again,
And having movable exhibit spaces to accommodate those sort of larger events. We do have dimensions. Actually, it's on the next couple of slides here. So there's just about 7,200 square feet on the first and second floors of this facility. And you can see this gray area is the existing wastewater treatment plant. And these kind of transparent boxes are where we're proposing infilling the environmental learning center. If you've been down there, there's that courtyard kind of, when you walk in, that would be where the bulk of the square footage would be, the first and the second floor mezzanine.
Is a view from that includes the. Okay.
I don't, not in this presentation. That would be more, but we don't have the rendering that we see here. This is basically from the front, looking back toward the.
If you're looking around
And then I just want to show you a little bit about the programming analysis that was done. Our sub-consultant had the exhibits, has done museum spaces in Buffalo, in Clayton, and elsewhere around the eastern United States. And they helped us sort of visualize how you would program something like this. I'll get more into what the next immediate steps for the Environmental Learning Center will be in a minute. But this is just kind of a notion of the different elements of that water themes that you could have throughout the space, ranging from cleaning to watershed, water cycle, water quality at the end, sewer and distribution exhibits, usage, and then on the second floor, some water appreciation. That's hard to see; it's a little blurry, and really workforce implications. One of the things that came up in our meetings was the fact that these are industries that are growing in possible employment for folks who are interested going forward. You don't think of yourself as maybe getting into that field unless you're presented with it. So, and you can see a real world example with all the staff already at the work. So that was some of the programming layouts, just some of the example exhibits, because that's where we're really at kind of a point where there's a menu of kind of topics to explore and then levels of engagement. One thing that Hadley brought up to our whole committee was that, there are different ways to showcase information and to be interactive. And some require more maintenance than others. We've talked about that as well.
Has there been any feedback from SUNY or Plattsburgh City School District on any of this?
We had a member of the SUNY faculty on our committee and the possible integration with the departments at SUNY, and then just members of the community on our committee. We got to bring this together with the local school population as well. They're gonna be primary users for this, right?
Well, that's the, you know, many primary, users see, city workers doing all kinds of things, but they really don't see any.
Oh, yeah, we'll have exhibits here as well to explain what they're doing in an engaging way and in a different levels of engagement too, Some exhibits work well for under 10, some work better for,
That's why I was just curious if it's school.
Yeah.
This is kind of really weird, somebody. Last one. Hitting those fields is really hitting on all those levels
yes.
in order to do that, which is a dying field.
And, and that's another good point is that then it's a professional certification. There's a need for that sort of engagement at that level too, not just for kids. So, and that was pointed out by our committee as well. They want folks who want to come back, not just for their kids to, it's not a kids museum. It's for something that is engaging for people of all ages. I can't remember where I was going to go, but that's the bottom line is we want them to, I remember where I was going. So it'll be up to the governance structure that is set up here to not only set up this exhibit space and layout, but also to evolve it. Because if it stays the same exhibits for 10 years, it's going to get stale.
With those being part of those licenses that really people the outcomes. Are you going to connect that into them being able to take flight tours as well?
I would definitely think so. Knowing John Ruff, I would definitely think so. He'll give it to you if you just walk up there today. So I think that's his actual goal is to have this integrated with the
Can any of that money be used to upgrade the facilities that you might need?
Well, so yeah, that's where we're at here now with the case study. So thanks for asking. What's that?
It's all based on water.
Right.
Yeah.
But any of the actual
So,
buildings and so forth?
I don't want, I'll put a wet blanket, I suppose, on that motion, unfortunately, is that most of these facilities, including the Echo Center, aren't revenue neutral. They do involve some support from donations or from the public sector too.
So you're saying that they don't sustain themselves, they can.
Correct. So our pro forma and governance structure analysis does break that down for how much is generated for the Echo Center across the lake, as well as the Wild Center in Tupper. And we also looked at another example, a larger one in Durham, North Carolina. Our colleagues at Forward Planning put this analysis together. And you see we break down the year they were established, annual visitors, how their governance is set up, operating costs, ranging from the Wild Center being 4.5 million in operating costs, Echo at 3.7, and that Museum of Life and Science in Durham at 9.5. So again, that's a bigger facility. They get almost 500,000 visitors a year at that particular facility. 100 at the Wild Center, 150. So
if you look at the Wiccan, because that's a smaller with a similar kind of mission.
we did not look at that one, but we looked at these three. That sort of comparison is probably a good one as well. We did break down a pro forma, and I probably can't read that in the room here, but it kind of breaks down expected revenue generation as well as expenditures and the need for, where city contributions or donations would come into play, or memberships. That's what a number of these places use as well. The big thing that is really the next step for an environmental learning center is a governance structure. Advancing any sort of building development, programming, really you need to have who's going to be in charge of this thing ironed out. What interest groups that we've mentioned, university, schools, hospital, what other interest groups would want to be part of that board, that governance committee. And then you would need to start setting up who's going to run this on a daily basis, who's going to be in charge of just entrance, are they volunteers, are they interns, and then as we mentioned a second ago, how you're going to evolve programming. One of the other things that's on our pro forma is hosting events in that event space upstairs. That could be a revenue generator to help offset some of the cost for expenses. So this is really, I think, the next step before grant funding is pursued for any construction of any of these facilities, is identifying who's going to run this, because it doesn't make sense. And none of the examples we had is the city itself.
What committees put together?
What's that?
Will that full board that you have there?
Yes, yeah, that's the, right, that's gonna be the, that's gonna be the, how we figure out who makes up that, committee for that board.
They almost looking for the water.
Well, look at that, I take, and you're right around. Jennifer.
Parents don't want to be, they don't need to be water experts, to be honest.
They just disagree. I wouldn't know as much as I am.
Oh, yeah, but it's good to have that, but I think there's good perspective elsewhere, parents, teachers from the elementary school, principals. Yes,
Would you see this as a separate entity from the city completely?
I would probably say there'd probably be some city representation on the committee. But I would say you'd want to establish a nonprofit.
Yeah.
To be
Okay,
this
yeah, I'm
entity.
glad to hear that, but I don't think we're qualified.
Exactly.
Well, so
Right.
almost gotta be.
Exactly.
The mayor.
So yeah, so that would be, that's the next, I think, step before you pursue any funding. Also, once you get that nonprofit set up, it makes it easier to get as well. It shows that you have your ducks in a row from a governance perspective, the stuff that you don't see in brick and mortar. So any questions on that quick? We've kind of covered questions as we've gone along, which has been so. We'll kind of move on to this. I'm going to kind of go through the end of the presentation here so we can wrap up the recording. But we will have this gallery viewing here for the next 10 minutes before we wrap things up. Over to my left, you'll see detailed panels of Harborside lakefront sub area, Harborside riverfront sub area, some impressive images that show you what some of these improvements look like in other settings, as well as the Environmental Learning Center, some detailed, more detailed analysis, images. We do have the building plans, the conceptual building plans over on the table on the left, along with a full pamphlet of the programming analysis from Hadley. And then lastly, that pro forma.
Was there any time during this that Mr. Rowe, would he present anything about what's his thoughts on it?
He wants it to be bigger than the evening. He is,
I mean, because if you,
the key driver.
is in that building, that's where my confidence.
He's been a key driver in a lot of these. He has kind of led the discussion about how he wants to see ongoing functionality of the plant be incorporated into the Environmental Learning Center, how the ongoing operations of the plant affect the farmers market and our design proposal as far as making that more of a pedestrian friendly area and moving most of the other vehicular traffic away from the waterfront.
Another question. Down there for motors.
So there are docks already that we wouldn't move. We do have a small pier over here more for fishing on this side of things, but there is actually I think no, this is already
Yeah.
The marina?
no, not the marina. It's next to the where there's a public.
Oh, right.
And then
Does that bring in more revenue for space if you actually for leasing that out?
absolutely. And then, as I mentioned, there's the Environmental Learning Center process over there as well. So just to wrap things up, we've got a lot of good feedback tonight. Please indicate some of your thoughts on these maps so we can make sure we have them recorded. We do have them, again, the meeting's being recorded, so we should be able to capture a lot of what we've discussed tonight. But the more we can get that indicated, the better from my end of things. Then we'll revise our plans based on some of the things that we heard tonight, and then move to finalize them in the document over the next couple of months. Those of you watching on the recording, we will be accepting comments online through a link that I'm going to share with you guys tomorrow morning that we posted on the project website. To just offer comments on both sub areas of the Harborside Master Plan as well as the Environmental Learning Center. And we'll be taking those through on November 14th. Like as I mentioned, we're finalizing that plan document, over the last quarter of 2022, getting that to the committee for their review before it goes to Department of State and then the City Council. So those are the final couple steps. As I mentioned as well, we do have that outstanding CFA funding application that we'll hear yea or nay in December. And just to give you kind of a sense of grant funding going forward, that consolidated funding application, which consists of almost all state agencies and their funding, except for Department of Transportation. Deadline for that annually is July, and the award date is in December.
So you realize that all these awards, if it's funny, it's all taxpayer driven money. And of course, it's all, so. Again.
Yes, so that's, this is something that the city thought was a priority, this Harborside Master Plan, making the most out of this significant waterfront piece of property in a really unique way, as we've discussed, to not hide from the fact that the wastewater treatment plant is on the site. So this is the city's attempt to make the most of that.
State grants is Long Island money.
So with that, I'm going to close up for tonight. Any last questions before I wrap things up? Thanks for listening. Please enter your comments. I got pens, pencils, sticky notes. Feel free to take a look at whatever you like. Thank you.
I didn't.
Thanks to the city.
Colors.